Hi, and welcome to another episode of Kuntarkis. My name is Michael Yon, and this episode is about the amazing creature known to Kuntarkis and many Australians as the Yowie, better known in many versions around the world as Bigfoot. This recording comes from our phone call while Kuntarkis looks out his car.
Oh, mate, I can see two beautiful big rainbows. Whoa.
Hey, do elementals reincarnate?
Do elementals incarnate, did you
Yeah,
say?
yeah.
You're talking into human form?
No, I'm talking just within their own system as they continue to be elementals. Do they age and then come back again and again?
They age, but very, very differently to humans, mate. Their aging process, if we look at their aging process to humanity, like a man, say, the average death is about 80, they would probably be about 800 years in human terms. They live a very long time. A very long time.
Yeah, because um their world is a lot less physical, isn't it? It's kind of more fourth dimensional.
Oh, it's pretty well fourth dimensional, mate. Yes, and they live also very, very differently. They live off energy. They were created by living consciousness from the mother planet, and they're the ones that look after all the different, how would you say, elements of Earth, like fire, water, air, earth, spirit, that type of thing. Very, very different to us, mate. Very
And
different.
so after they've lived for say 800 years and they're like, okay, see you guys,
They choose to.
they choose to then,
They choose to pass away.
yeah, yeah, wow.
And also they can transform into a higher being, or they can transform into their own world of vibration, whatever that may be, and eventually come back and choose to be a different form of element. It just depends.
Mm, mm. So do you think like on other planets that the elementals there are also different looking?
Yes,
Wow.
yes, yeah. But there's a lot the same also, like there might be a small forms of characteristics that look different in shape, form, and that. But no, a lot of them are pretty well the same. Yes, yes.
Mm. Yeah, wow. And so, like on Earth, I know, like I remember you did a seminar that I was at where it was all about elementals, and you spoke about the different ones. Is there a set kind of amount of different types of elemental beings? Like, there's
Yes, there are, mate. Yes,
yeah.
there's about 23, round about 23. There's about 23 different forms of species. There's even an elemental that looks like a man, and you can see it's like silhouette form. You'll see them walking in a rainforest, but they've got looks like they've got a fish head. That's the strange part. I mean, I've never really been able to catch one close up to actually verify that. But I remember watching this film, which was the biggest form of proof. This guy went into a rainforest, and I don't remember where because it's a long time ago. And he was on the opposite side of the river, which wasn't a big river. It was only about, say, maybe 15, 20 foot wide between the rainforest. And he was camping there, and he was filming in the early hours of the morning all the beautiful mist and the drizzle and everything like that. And he filmed it, and he did about 2 hours of filming on a VHS film because he had a VHS cameras back in those days. And I went over his place when he got back from holidays, and he said, "Oh, you want to see the film?" I said, "Yeah, I love it." And we sat and watched. And about 40 minutes into the film, I looked and I said, "Oh, Jesus, play that back, play that back." So he wound it back very slowly, and I said, "There, stop there, stop there." Now, when I say stop, stop, I said, "Stop," and he stopped. And I looked and I said, "See, I'm going to point this out." I went up to the TV. I pointed out the being, very muscular in a silhouette form. It's like it was wearing some sort of suit, but a body type suit, but it was silhouette, and it walked like a man. And what it also had, it was like a head or a helmet of some description. If it was a helmet, it was shaped to the head but looked like a fish standing upright. That was the funny part.
Wow.
Yeah. And, you know, I said to him, I said, oh, mate, can I have a copy of that? And he was going to, but he never did. And I lost contact with him. And I was very disappointed because in the background, you could see other elementals. You could pick them out. It was really, really good. Like, they must have been watching him. I was one time sitting on the veranda in Kira. It's called Eagle Hill, not Eagle Mountain, Eagle Hill. And it's when you come around the bend of the ocean, on the right-hand side, before you come around the bend, is a big, massive hill. And they call that Eagle Hill, and it's got a big eagle in bronze sitting on the top of it. You can see it. But I lived behind that, high up, it was only a 3 complex, but they were really big apartments. And I had to walk up, like, say, 60 stairs to get to mine at the top. I was on number 3. And they had the stairs on the side of the house. And I was sitting up there one evening, just looking over Surface Paradise. You could see Surface Paradise in the distance because we were that high up. And it just stood out, bright as bright can be. And I'm looking and looking and looking, and I kept closing my eyes to do a meditation. And I'm just thinking about the elemental world. It just popped into my head, all the elementals. And I'm saying hello to Jaka and other ones. And suddenly, this voice spoke. And they said, hello. And I didn't open my eyes yet. I thought, oh, it might have been the guy that I was sharing the apartment with. And it said again, it said, hello, are you there? And I opened my eyes. I turned very slowly to the left in the other chair on the other side of the table. And there was this being sitting there. He looked very human, but more like an elf in a way. He was probably about the same height as me. And he was just sitting there with his leg folded, with his 2 hands on his actual leg. I looked over and I could see. And I said, hello to you. And he said, what is your name? At that time, I said, Roman. And he goes, Roman. He said, I picked up on your vibration. He said, you don't have any concerns about me? I said, absolutely not. I said, I have some friends. One's Jaka. And he says, oh, so you have elemental friends? I said, yes. I said, what part of the vibration are you from? He said, you would refer to it as the 4th dimension. I said, oh. And I learned a lot from him. And we were talking about, you know, the earth, the rivers, the heart of Mother Earth. Oh, all these things. And we're talking about the sky, the the spirits in the sky, like the air spirits and all that type of stuff. And I learned a lot. And we must have spoken for about a good hour and a half. And then suddenly, up the stairs, I heard the stairs. I said, uh-oh. I said, my other person that shares half this place is coming home. And he said, well, then I must leave. He said, I will come again. He said, beautiful meeting you, Roman. And he just vanished out of thin air. And when this guy came around the corner, he said, hey, who are you talking to? I said, oh, just myself. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you see him again?
No, I didn't, mate.
Mhm.
Never did. Never ever saw him again. No, never saw him again.
So he's an elemental. What's his element, do you think?
He would be, I reckon he would be like an elf.
As in, like, do elves deal mostly with, say, earth, or
Earth, yes, yes.
as opposed to
They,
water or fire or air?
yeah. Well, elves got a very different, they're very much into nature, and they're like the overseers. They actually instruct, like goblins and ones like Jaka. They actually ask them to go and do things, and they just do it. They're not told to do it. They're asked if they would like to go and do that, and they say yes. So they go and do it. A lot of the little elements like to feel important, makes them feel important, I should say. So they just go and do it, whatever's asked of them.
I remember years ago you mentioned this, and I've been meaning to kind of clarify. You you said that like the one we refer to as the Yeti or the Bigfoot, they were actually, as which are, you've said they're elementals. They would they would help guide in spaceships. Can you expand on that?
Okay, before I do that, I just want to explain what Garber used to talk to me about. I haven't seen Garber for years now, and I believe that he's on another world because I know for a fact that he got very friendly with Kadi, their race, and also with Kanag, and I think he even knows Yarkis Cardis. And he was always a learner. He wanted to learn. And what intrigued Kanag back then, which is a long time ago, what intrigued him was how they move between vibrations. And he explained that it was the Nicarons. And Kanag never even knew that because there were times when Kanag was gone for thousands of years in different lives or different situations when they were overseeing Earth.
Sorry, Garba is a like a Bigfoot?
He's a Yowie. He's a
Yowie,
Yowie.
Yowie, that's Yeti
Yeah,
Yowie. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. He stands just over 7 foot tall. And yes, he has got a very hairy body, and he has got it's sort of grey brown. The hair is not as long as it used to be. The last time I remember seeing him, his eyes have gone from being red to being green. And when he was living underground all the time because of the fear of man trying to hunt them for all those years, they didn't come out, and their eyes ended up red because they're a creature. But the interesting factor about them is that originally they are descendants of the Neanderthals. But apparently there was, and I don't know a lot about this, but apparently there was an alien race that was always interfering with different species from different worlds. And apparently they did something to them that increased their size, their strength, and I think also whatever else they needed to do. And I think that changed their genetics from that moment on, after that was done. And when new ones were born, they were born the way they were as parents. And it just followed through. But the Nicarons, they taught them how to do a transcendental type meditation to do with their genetics and also to do with their living energy. And they learned to be able to house energy and step through it into the fourth dimension. So there's a lot more behind it. There's a lot. But I know that Garba, he ended up becoming, even when I knew him, he ended up becoming like, I think like an advisor between, I think, the Carons, Cadiz race and the Yowie race because of his thirst for knowledge. Now they can walk amongst humanity like have a guess who?
Reptilians.
That's it. Yes. And not be seen. Before they couldn't do it. They either had to be in the third dimension or the fourth dimension.
Oh, one or the other. Now they can go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now they can walk between the fourth and the third, so humanity won't see them in the rainforest because they absolutely adore the rainforest. And there are caves that exist in the fourth dimension that can't be seen in the third dimension. And it would just look like a mountain or a hill. And when they talk or laugh or yell, humans can't hear them because they're not in that vibration. I know that I used to pick up his voice before he came and saw me, and I could tune in to his voice talking, and then suddenly he would appear.
Mm.
I put a massive hole in the wall when I first saw him.
Really?
Yeah, I was sitting in a chair, and I was in deep thought, and I had my two hands under my chin, just staring at a mirror across the lounge room where I was living at that time. And suddenly, I smelt this smell, and I opened my eyes, and there's this massive body standing in front of me, all hairy. And I looked up, and I literally lifted off my chair, hit the wall, and the chair went straight through the plaster. Cost me nearly what was it, 200 back that time, about $280 or $290 to repair. But it wasn't very funny.
No.
Yep. And he goes, "I am so sorry. I am so sorry." You know, and he's, look at, I said, "Who the so-and-so are you?" I said, "What are you?" And he said, "Well, you would refer to me as a Yowie." And I just stared. I was just amazed. Then I had a smile come over my face. I said, "Oh, don't worry about the wall." I said, "What's your name?" That's the first thing I said. "What's your name?" He said, "My name is Gubba." I said, "Yeah, suits you." Yeah, it was really an intriguing moment, I can tell you.
So, why would they be helping to guide in spacecraft? And what spacecraft were they helping to guide in?
It's not that they were actually guiding the spacecraft, mate. What it was like it was a connection where they wanted, how would you say, the Nicarons wanted to know the Yowies. So they wanted to be able to communicate with them. They couldn't communicate with humanity because humanity, even though they're more advanced in their technology, they were ignorant when it came to someone like, say, Nicarons or even the Yowies. They shoot the Yowies first, then ask questions. They'd probably try to bomb the Nicarons before they ask questions because of their level of understanding and the amount of fear that is that is impregnated within humanity's genetics from all their karma, all their life's experiences. So they chose the Yowies, and they communicated very well. And some of them were invited on board, and they got to know them very well.
Fascinating.
It is actually.
So
there's so much to it.
So how many years ago do you think was when they fully were able to transitioned in their consciousness to be able to go between the fourth and the third dimension?
Okay. Let me just give me a moment on that. I do remember something. I just got to formulate it. I know that it took a fairly length amount of time. It's not as if it was done overnight or over a week, over a month, over a year, or over 10 years. It was done over a very long period of time because there was only certain time factors that they could actually come and do that.
Now, you say they, you mean the Nicarons that would help them do it?
That's right. Yeah, Nicarons used to actually come down here. Kanag never did. But there were Nicarons that came down secretly and would actually teach them. They would go to their caves in their dimension and they would actually teach them. And it took a very long time because, you got to understand that the Yowies were not technically advanced in any way whatsoever. Yet, when what's his name, Garba went onto the spaceships, he looked at everything, even though he didn't know basically what it was. He understood the process of it. So they were quite intelligent, but was never given the opportunity to express it. And he did. And that's why eventually when Kuntarkis met him, they were really intrigued with him, just like they were intrigued, nearly 9 million years ago with the Doricans. They spent years and years and years and years helping them, a long time. And that's what they were actually doing, is same with the Yowies, and they did.
Because it was the right time. Because the
It was the right
Yowies,
time.
the Yowies had actually had peaceful hearts, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. And they still do, mate.
Mm.
They still do. They're not violent. They will fight to protect if they have to. If they're cornered, they don't want to, but they will. But they don't want to. They don't want to be seen as an aggressive race, because they never have been. They've always basically run away to survive. They have a very strong family unit, and when they lose one of their family to stupidity, they blame themselves.
And they probably have. There's normally no interest or value for them to be connected with normal humans anymore.
No.
No.
Okay. It was between 36 and 40,000 years ago that Atlantis actually blew up. Okay, that's roughly. Give or take here 1,000 years or whatever. It would have been about 51, maybe 52,000 years ago, in between that, somewhere in that mark, that they first started teaching. And it took probably several hundred years in that teaching. Could have been 200, could have been 300. I don't think there's any record of that. So that would make that really hard to define.
And it's interesting because they were totally third-dimensional beings. They would incarnate like normal, and yet they were taught to phase into the fourth dimension a lot more. And basically, I guess they were taught to become elementals.
Absolutely. They are classed as elemental, actually.
Now they are, yeah.
Yeah. But the interesting factor is they were never conditioned like humanity. Humanity has had 928,000 years of complete violence. And that violence was not as if it was created outside of Earth. It was created within humanity. All the evil was growing, and it created so much violence and wars that it would take a lot to teach humanity how to, say, do a transcendental meditation. It would probably take another, say, 500 to 1,000 years more than what the Yowies, because the Yowies had no technology. What they had was their spiritual essence, just like the Nicarons. The Nicarons started from a spiritual level. And when they evolved and they became into that thought consciousness, say evolution, they believed in nature straight away. And in the first million years of their evolution, they were already working with living energy. Yeah, it took a long time, but they were already aware of it, that everything in nature was living energy. Everything that was formed on their planet, the Karas, which was the first planet at that time, was living energy. So they evolved not in a violent way that humanity has evolved, because they didn't have that form of evil on the planet.
And the Yowie started off when they just split off from the Neanderthals and decided, let's just hang out underground. Was it really just the fact that they went underground that they separated?
Oh, I think you'll find what it was. It was the alien race that interfered with their genetics.
Before they'd even split off from the Neanderthals.
Absolutely. And the aliens, whoever they were actually playing with those Yowies while they were still the way they were. But then they developed them into a point like they became like a war machine. You know, they were 7 foot tall, they were monstrous, they had probably had strength like in a car on 5 times stronger than a human. So it made a very big difference, and they wanted them for a specific reason. But what the aliens, I believe, didn't realize, that they already had the power of thought, and they could use that when they were more developed, and they decided to disappear, and they did, because they realized they didn't want to be controlled by this strange-looking race of beings. So they went underground. And they were underground for a very long time, by the way.
Really, to hide from these aliens that were changing
Yeah,
them. Wow.
yeah. And then when they eventually came back onto Earth, and man was, in the process and all that type of stuff, and when they still had the little round pellet bullets, they were sighted and they were shot and eaten, by the way. And their furry skin and all that was made into shoes and whatever else they made. But they were shot on sight because they saw them as a demon.
So, they all, as a race now, are at that higher level where they can phase into and be more fourth dimensional. Does
Absolutely.
that mean there's none of them that are literally, well, yeah, because we spoke about the, I think it's called the Yarrumbidgee, which is where they've been sighted in Australia, though very few people have seen them. I know you have. I know my friend Jeff Guest has. They would just be like maybe I don't know how they'd be related necessarily, but there are creatures that are kind of yeah, hairy and kind of like a human as
That's
well
right.
that are hiding underground. That stuff still does exist.
Well, I saw one in, I'm just trying to think of the name of the place going up towards Cairns. You have to veer off to the left before you go to Binda, I think it is, and you go up into the mountain, and I'm sure it's Atherton. That's it, Atherton.
Oh yeah, I've been
It's
there.
a town. Yeah, Atherton, right? Well, to get into Atherton back then, this is going back many years ago when I was sales repping. I was coming around the bend, and it's a long bend, and there was what do they call it, a tractor that was parked 3/4 across the road. Apparently, it stalled, and they couldn't do anything with it. And the guy apparently left to go off to try to find some way of getting someone to come and help and, pull it off the road, because the road was not a wide road, but it was fairly wide on that bend. And I was coming up, and I was going to go around it very slowly, and suddenly, out of nowhere, because on my left the land was higher, probably 20 feet up the wall, whatever this thing was, it leaped right across and came down close to my right-hand side of my windscreen and disappeared down into the valley. Hit whatever it hit, wherever it hit, and however it survived. And I looked and I said, oh my God, the hell was that? It was tall. It was really hairy, like a bloody gorilla. Not like a gorilla, so like a bear. It had hands, arms, and all that like a man, but huge. And it looked at me, and it had red eyes.
Wow.
So it was running from something. And it literally leaped across the tractor. It was a big tractor, and in front of me. And I was just amazed by it. And I just literally smacked my brakes on, and I lost control of the car. And the back wheels actually went off the road. So there was a tractor in front of me, and I was blocking the other part of the road completely. And the car was hanging over, and I was saying, oh my God, what do I do? Get out of the vehicle? And just then, this car come down on my right-hand side, and it slowed right down and he said, oh my God, he looked, he saw the tractor and he saw me, and he said, oh, well, I must have swerved to miss the tractor. And I got out really slowly. He got out of the car and he came and he said, you okay? I said, I think so. He said, what happened? He said, I didn't see the tractor and I swerved. I couldn't tell him I saw the creature. He wouldn't have believed me. And he said, come with me. He said, come with me. So I locked the car and we went up the road, and there was a small petrol station up about, I don't know, probably 8Ks, 10Ks, and that guy came back down with a old type tow truck, and he literally tied up the back part of the car and he pulled it back up on the road again, and I had to reverse up and turn the car around because it was a hired car by Avis, and it was okay. And then he brought back some signs and put those funny signs around saying, like, watch the tractor type thing. Because he said, I don't know where the guy is with the tractor, he said. I said, well, I don't know. And I didn't hear anything after that because I thanked the guy who drove me to pick up this other guy. And I went off and I went and saw my retail store. I was telling him the story. He believed it. He believed about the Yowie. He called it not a Yowie. He called it Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you reckon there'd be some number of them still living underground in Australia and elsewhere?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, in America, yeah. They've been seen in different parts of the world, mate. Yeah, they have. There's been some very, very strange types of creatures that are now coming out. Yeah, very strange. I think a lot of them are man-made, actually, experiments.
Very interesting. The origin of the Yowie. That's
Yes,
amazing.
yes.
Mm.
Well, you gotta realize that there are alien beings that are like 10 times older than what the Nicarons are.
Really?
Yeah,
That
and
are
they are
physical
so.
still?
Some are, yes. Some have never advanced, even like the Nicarons advanced in technology. The Nicarons have advanced because of the way they evolved in their thought consciousness. There's a big difference in that form of evolution. It depends on how you think. You can get one person and you can talk to them and they'll just think you're a bloody idiot. You can get another person and they'll go, wow, tell me more, because they have a different thought consciousness.
Yeah. So these beings you're talking about that are, say, like 10 times older than the Nicarons, they've evolved here in this universe as well?
No, not in this universe, mate. No, in their own universe.
Yeah, interesting. Wow.
You got to realize that, as I said, there are trillions of universes, there are billions of planets, and there are millions of different life species upon all those planets throughout all those universes. It just depends on the thought consciousness. And unfortunately, no disrespect to us as humans, we are really at the lower end of evolution.
Yeah, as far as being conscious and having technology, did you say in this universe we're basically the lowest?
Well, I wouldn't say the lowest, but I would say we're not far from it, because what it is, we don't think consciously enough. We're not self-aware. People will say, yes, I am. Well, actually, they're not. Because you could say something to them and they just look at you and they just don't comprehend what you're saying, so they think you're weird. That's an unconscious person.
Or they think they have logic and therefore they're conscious, but really they're.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. Or other people think they're so highly intelligent, yet they're not.
mm.
That's just their mask.
So the Yowie is one of the elementals here on Earth, but because it came from uh, the humans and became an elemental over time, that would mean that it's actually very unique to Earth. Like on other planets, there are m probably a lot of similar elementals, but there's no Yowie on other planets, is there?
Not like the one we have here. But just so it's completely understood, the Yowie, it never actually came from humans. It came from Neanderthals. How far back? I'd have to go right back into that. But the thing is, they were genetically engineered. Now, the strange thing is, genetic engineering by a large variety of different alien species from the past. And when I say the past, I'm going back anything from, say, 2 million to 41 million years ago. I mean, the planet's 4.71 billion years old. So you can imagine it has a tremendously long history. And what was here before 41 million years would be mind-boggling if we look at it honestly. I mean, if the universes, or the universe itself, is trillions and trillions of, say, human years old in its own evolution, and now there are trillions of universes, you can imagine the history and the evolution of any planet throughout any of those universes would be absolutely enormous when it comes to species.
Yeah, for sure. Because you were saying that the elementals can be somewhat similar on other planets, like a bit different here or there. But yeah, because the Yowie came from the Neanderthal, and that was a complete genetic manipulation by a very ancient race, that it would be unique to Earth.
Absolutely, it would be very unique to Earth. That's very true.
And what the elementals, including the Yowies, like what language do they speak?
The Yowies were taught how to speak Sanskrit by the Nakarons. They learned actually very quickly. In fact, they would be able to have learnt Sanskrit far greater than, say, any human on the planet, because the humans already had different forms of languages, and Sanskrit got lost over the thousands of years from the original Nakarons. And it changed into many forms of languages. I mean, we are one of the very few planets that have such a variety of languages. I mean, you take the Chinese language, the original language was Mandarin, and now they have so many different dialects, it's unbelievable. If we look at the oldest language on Earth not beyond Sanskrit, say, to Sanskrit, you would find it would be Hebrew. Hebrew would be the closest language to Sanskrit, yet so different. So different. If I said something like, this is a very difficult thing to do, but I've got to convert my mind capacity from one language to another, especially when it comes to Sanskrit. It's not like speaking Japanese and, say, speaking Chinese. They're two very different languages, but Sanskrit, the meaning is much shorter than what you would have to, say, express in English. If I said something like, let me just give it a moment. Bonina pasan ila shaku nila tuma ulutu tati shima hawaii bana alasa tanimu alatumpa. It's saying, once upon a time, there was a magical man named Yakas Kardas, and he was the greatest magician of all time. Yet, in his own world that he developed over 1 million years, he understood the meaning of magic. And it's not just the word magic, it's mystical. So there's quite a difference if you look at the way English is spoken and Sanskrit is spoken. Uyana, Tanan, Shani, Alata, Sima, Utu, Ninu, Lanuna, McCoy. Now your name is McCoy.
Oh, okay.
Michael is McCoy.
Oh, wow.
Right? Yeah, McCoy. It's how it's pronounced. You say it.
McCoy.
Yeah, McCoy. It's like they express it in a very heartfelt way. And yet they can also express very deeply. They can say things like, Jinain te nada shakur. It's like they're being to their final point of desperation when it comes to someone who wants to battle, and the Nakarans are trying to stop the slaughtering. And their voice can be very powerful. And the Sanskrit language is a very powerful language in itself. And when you express it in power or love, somebody else will actually succumb to it because they won't be able to help themselves. See, there's no swear languages. There's no swearing in the Nakaran language as Sanskrit. None. Yet in English, we have lots of swear words, and they sound horrible.
And what about the elementals? What do they speak?
They speak Sanskrit.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because you said that the Yowies were taught it by the Nakarans. So
That's right.
So did the Yowies teach the rest of the elementals, or?
No, elementals already knew it. It's
Yeah.
a universal language. Universal. When I say universal, I'm not joking. If you counted all the universes, well, most of them, in fact, probably 92, maybe 95%, actually spoke Sanskrit. And some of those races have been around, say, anything up to 100 million years. In fact, far beyond that, 500 million years, even 1 trillion years. I've never gone into that to establish that timeline. But I can tell you one thing, it's very long.
Yeah, I mean, if a race has been around for very, very long, then it's likely that they'll end up evolving beyond the physical reality anyway, isn't it? So they don't really, it should be finite. They shouldn't just last physically forever.
No. But there are races, mate, that are far longer in evolution than the Nakarans even, right? And I mean, the Nakarans, it's only 27 million, but doesn't sound a lot, does it? Yet how long are we? We're only 1 million if we look at as we are as humanity. So they got 26 million years on us. And that's a long time, isn't it? 26 million years. I mean, look at it. Look at the dinosaurs. They roamed the earth for several million years. Now, those dinosaurs, they didn't just happen out of nature. They were created genetically. And they were created genetically, I think more so for fun than anything. I mean, they could have also been created as a food source for all we know, for aliens from other worlds. And they used planet Earth to create them because they wouldn't want them running around on their planet. I could go back and find out about that because that's a curious thing to me, to see if they were created not just for fun, but also as a food line. So aliens could come down here and kill 1 or 2 or 10 and take them back. Because they evolved very quickly. Like when I say evolved, I don't mean in brain power. I mean in body weight. They grew very, very quickly. You know, the one that I would love some way. Seriously, maybe when I'm physically gone from this earth, taking my last human breath and developing my own abilities again, I would love to open up a doorway from the past, and that goes back between 73 million to 77 million years, and I would love to bring Charlie through, just to show humanity that there was a dinosaur that has never been recorded, but also was the largest and the most powerful, and it was simply a vegetarian. Now, wouldn't that be interesting? And yet, it could kill 3 T-Rexes, no problems. It was that powerful.
Wow.
Its tail was powerful, its head was powerful, and its feet were so muscular and so quick. It was the quickest animal. Normally, when you have such a large animal, it's slow. But this one, it had this really ferocious ferocity about itself, where it moved so quick. And that was interesting.
So do you think like what amount of the like what percentage of the dinosaurs do you think came about because of alien intervention?
The percentage,
Yeah.
the animals that were actually here were the fairly basic ones. The T-Rex, that did not come from the planet Earth originally. What it did come from was genetic engineering from other species, from other worlds, with a dinosaur that was originally here. And what you'll probably find, the actual dinosaur that it eventually became was probably only a quarter of its size. But because the oxygen levels were at least 40% to 50% greater then than it is now, and have you noticed how species have become smaller in the animal kingdom? They've actually become smaller. Lions, over the last 200 years, have actually decreased in size. Tigers have decreased in size to what they originally were only 200 years ago. So you can imagine how tall or how large a tiger would be if it was in the Neanderthal time. Not the Neanderthal, sorry, the dinosaur time, because of the higher level of oxygen. It allowed everything to grow extra big, including trees, including bushes, everything, including all the species. Some species, no, they didn't. They stayed small. But even the roaches were at least 50 times the size of a roach today. Centipedes, they have still found a centipede up to 2 meters long. In the days, going back in the dinosaur time, there was a centipede that was so well armored. I mean, armored like in really hard armor on its back, and its legs were sort of covered too. But it was at least 4 to 5 meters. It was huge, massive. So everything has decreased because the oxygen levels have decreased dramatically to what they were back in that time. You know, if you take, this is an example. Let's say, just say you were married, no children, and you stepped through a porthole and you went back 73 million years ago. First of all, if you saw a saber-toothed tiger, you would freak. You would freak out beyond all things, because the saber-toothed tigers I've explained to you was nothing to what they've recorded in history. If they stood on their forelegs, their back would be up to my shoulders, and I'm not a big person, but that's still very tall to the top of their back. They were nearly 13 foot to maybe 15 foot long from head to tail.
Wow.
Muscular. Their legs were unbelievably muscular. In fact, they could leap over things so tall. Their head was at least, it's got to be 8, maybe 10 times the size of a man's head, a fully grown man. Now, if you decided then to have a child or 2 or 3 or 4, right, and they decided to have children, when they eventually grew up and maybe they had somebody else that they could marry or whatever the case may be, you would find that kids would be so tall. They would suddenly begin to grow more and more through every single generation. Back then, 73 million years ago, because of the oxygen. We are designed to grow consciously as a being. So we would literally grow more and more and could end up the size of the Zybekipa, anything from 12 to 15 foot, even taller. Now, science is starting to prove that there are creatures on this planet, which they're keeping secret a lot, that look like aliens, strange-looking aliens, and they are up to 30 foot tall. They've actually got skeletons. They first released it, and then the government comes in and squashes it, and you hear nothing else about it. It's all been silenced. They don't want us to know. They want us to stay dumb. They want us to stay in fear. And everything the government does now, don't believe anything. Like scientists are saying, oh, there's this massive asteroid that's going to hit the Earth and wipe us out and put us back in the Stone Age. And you'd be lucky if you survive. You go back into the freezing time, like it did 69 or 72 million years ago. That was a lie. That was literally to scare people, to create fear in their genetics. It gets recorded. That's why we suffer from our own emotions if we suddenly are caught up in a situation that puts fear into us, and it releases that particular emotion either from a previous lifetime or from our parents' genetics or what we experienced. And that's the problem.
Yeah, I see. If it wasn't for aliens mucking around with the dinosaurs, how many do you think would have still just been as they were as we know them?
I think the species would have been a lot less, at least like 60, maybe 80% less when it comes to the ones that they have discovered that are like, 30 foot tall. What do they call that one that's it's a vegetarian, it's got a massively long tail, and it's about 100 foot long from tail to top of its head. Look how big that one is, right? And yet its brain power, it never really evolved. Never evolved. Its brain power is so minimal compared to, say, a T-Rex. A T-Rex had at least 90% more brain ability, especially when it comes to stalking its prey, planning how to attack it.
So like what were they, the raptors? They would have been...
Oh, raptors were the same, mate. They were the most cunning creatures. They worked in groups, and they had a clicking sound that was their language.
You reckon they were made by aliens?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep, they were played with. If you look at the species that existed all those years ago, the littler ones, there's ones about like, a foot and a half tall. They come along and finish off every little piece of meat that was left. Scavengers, that's it, scavengers. Well, scavengers, it's a really interesting thing because they were also played with. Because if you look at it and study some of them against some of the bigger ones, you will find the DNA is so similar in comparison. So they were also played with. And when you play with DNA, like genetically, through genetic engineering, you create a different form of species with a different form of genetics. So every little animal that's born through them will be like them. But occasionally, something unusual will happen in nature. It'll go back to the little one, and little ones might have been born and they were just eaten automatically by the ones that literally born them.
So what these alien-like creatures that were discovered to have lived in the past, how far back were they, and what do you know about them, the ones that were 30 foot tall?
Okay, well, I've never gone into the actual evolution of their species, but I would say there's something like the Zybecupa, just very different in form. I would say they weren't humanoid in any way whatsoever. They were very alien orientated, like Cadiz race or even say the Dorican race. They were just pure dragons. I mean, you expressed to me like how you see it. Can you imagine a race of dragons that were the most vicious carnivores out 9 million years ago? And they were so vicious that they would even rip up their own kind and eat them. And that's what they end up doing. Because they end up eating all the animals on their planet, they started attacking each other, the weaker. And they would do that for centuries. And then when the Nicarons came down, they even tried to eat the Nicarons. The Nicarons had massive force fields that these creatures would hit. Sometimes even it would kill them when they hit it so forcefully, snap their neck. They're like hitting a brick wall that you couldn't knock down. So if you look at their race and how the Nicarons eventually calmed them down and taught them to communicate and taught them how to speak Sanskrit, how to change their vocals, which the Nicarons helped through living energy. They did surgery through living energy to change the cord system in their throats so they could speak like a human man. And they did that to all of them. All of them wanted to. All of them suddenly wanted to be a part of whatever that evolution was, because they knew they were all going to die. They were just going to end up eating each other like those monsters that were created by Multnomah on Shikani so long ago. So those creatures knew eventually they'd die out because they ate all the animals. They couldn't catch the birds. It was very rare. But they ate all the animals on the planet, so they end up attacking each other. And then eventually there was only one left. And he basically died of old age.
You're talking about on Shikani?
Yeah, on Shikani. And that was a true story. That's when Kuntarkis, as myself, and Kalisha, I took her for the first time to that planet. That's a long time ago. And she met that creature. It shocked her beyond all things. She's not one to have fear, but that put fear on her face for several moments. But it couldn't break through. But the point is, that's what happens in evolution. Eventually, something must die out. It's like nature knows. Nature knows. It's like a tomato plant. You genetically play with a tomato plant or any plant, and then you leave it, and it just dies off and regrows, dies off and regrows, and it might do it 100 times. And the same thing might grow again. It will eventually grow back into the original form, because that's what happens in nature, because it's all encoded genetically from living energy. You can't change living energy, by the way. You can change it like yourself. You can change the energy about yourself, but you can't change the actual structure of living energy. It never has changed. It will always be living energy. The only difference is it can be formed into a different species, but it's still living energy. The Yowies are one of the most interesting species that I've ever come across. And the Doricans, the dragons, they are just one species that I just love. I just love them. And I was going to finish this before and I didn't. They were then taught how to transform by breaking down their atomic structure, which is living energy in its own cellular form. Breaking that down through living consciousness and changing shape. Took several hundred years, but it did. And that's the same with the Yowies. The Yowies have grown consciously, and they are far more intelligent than humans, mate, today. Far more intelligent, which is really interesting.
Yeah, wow. So they live here and I guess, like, just naturally stepped into being elementals, even though that was never really like the plan. But because they are able to be fourth dimensional and they do that more. So what are they're just here to continue to evolve in their own consciousness?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're not into technology, by the way. Even though Garba was always fascinated by the Nicaron ships, they're not into that. What they're into is spiritual development in themselves. And what's really lucky is they are literally a spiritual being. And that's the beauty of them. That's why they are balanced in mind, body, spirit, and soul. And that's why they can move between vibrations and literally just disappear.
How did they learn to shift between the physical and the fourth dimension?
Nicarons, they taught them, mate. It took a long time, but they taught them. And it's like I remember saying to you on the veranda in Harndorf when I did that small seminar, I said, it's like saying, I'm standing right here. But if you shift your consciousness, it's like stepping to the right, which goes into your future. If you step to the left, it's like going into your past to be aware of your past. And that's vibrations. You're stepping back in vibration to understand what you once were. You're stepping into a higher vibration by wanting to go forward. And that's what they did. They were taught the most simplest ways, and just practice allowed them to happen. We can do the same if we learn to become self-aware.
Wow. I think it'd be quite interesting to see a 30-foot tall alien. That'd be wow.
Yeah, mate. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep. Well, it was the armor god that actually placed, I think I said to you the other day or something, the armor god made a deal with these beings that were massively huge. They were 30 foot or 40 foot tall.
The
And they
Cyclops.
brought them down. Yeah, that's them. They brought them down to earth, and put them up against all the other aliens. They caused massive destruction. Massive destruction. Yeah, they died. A lot of them died. Maybe it's even their bones that some of the times they discovered, because they discovered them everywhere, not just in one place, all over the place. The history of the earth is so broad. It would be incredible just to, be able to go back into the past and see all that.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned that there's a planet that Yakis Cardis has been helping out, and they're basically untainted, aren't they? Because they've evolved into their own consciousness as one race, and nothing bad has happened. And then Yakis Cardis has rocked up and just helped to maintain that nothing bad, no interference will happen.
No, he wiped out. He put a force field around the planet. He also he was asked to come there because they had a creature that evolved and it suddenly just appeared. I mean, aliens could have put it there, other aliens for all they know.
Yeah.
But the creature was so huge, it was killing off those people by the dozen every day. And it was just literally ripping them apart and eating all their internal organs, only their internal organs. So Marcus came and I told you he was attacked by one, and he swung around and put his hand there, and this energy just swarmed out of his hand, hit the creature, and the creature literally dissolved, and his energies went through Yakis Cardis and just dissipated. And then Yakis Cardis said, "That's it," and he just went over the entire planet and wiped them all out. He created, you know that music, the flute that you play and you can control the rats. Well, he created a special music notes over the entire planet. He tuned into their energy field and he made it and played it, and it went into all the massive tunnels that they lived in, and they all came out. And they all came to one spot, in different sections, and he just went along and wiped them all out, got rid of the lot.
Oh, okay.
So he was like the flute, whatever you
Yeah, the
call that
Pied
person.
Piper.
Yeah, he was like the Pied Piper.
Interesting.
Yeah. And he goes back there. He's always invited to go back there and, sit with them and eat with them. And he teaches his philosophy, and they're very much into heart love and understanding of the heart. So, yeah, I think they'll evolve very, very spiritually, but also very powerfully spiritually.
Yeah. Do they somehow start off with Sanskrit? Like, how does that work? How does a newly evolved race start speaking and automatically start speaking Sanskrit?
As this creature evolved, just like any creature in any universe, when it started getting vocal cords that it could actually emit sound, what came out of their vocal cords eventually was perfect Sanskrit, because it's a universal language. And all planets in many, many different universes are interconnected because every planet has its own spirit. See, and also, if you look at, say, nature in every universe, in every planet, nature is what creates everything. And on every world, it knows. And within nature, it would already know the language Sanskrit. So when a creature is chosen to, say, evolve in a very different formal fashion, eventually becoming a speaking creature, well, the language it's going to speak, mate, is going to be Sanskrit. Now, if it was Chinese, say in nature, it had the Chinese language, right, embedded within the energy field all over the entire planet. Well, you're breathing in that living energy that has the Chinese language instilled within its own genetics. So when you are formed and you started creating vocal cords and becoming, how would you say, as a species in your own evolution, you will talk Chinese.
Fascinating. Yeah, I get you. That's just so different to comprehend. Yeah.
Yep. And yet it's reality.
Mm. And as you say, it's universal. So all these other universes, it's the same thing. They're evolving into, they're continuing with Sanskrit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
right.
Wow. So we were talking, Kentuckus, we were talking about your friend Gubba, the Yowie, and I just wanted to ask, like, about the connection you had. Like, for instance, over what time did you know him, and how many times did you connect with him, and what kind of things did you talk about and learn from each other?
Okay. GABA appeared to me. I won't go into that part too deeply, but GABA appeared to me, which literally frightened me out of my pants, I can tell you. I've never seen anything like that before. But it didn't take long for me to become very comfortable with him, because I've never really been scared of many things, sometimes just very hesitant more than anything. I thought when I first saw him, I thought he was a demon of some description, because I had an experience when I was not quite 20, and it was one of the most horrifying experiences that I've ever seen. And this thing came to me, had a massive head with two big horns on its head, and it had the most biggest red eyes you've ever seen, the most muscular body that you've ever seen, and a massive long tail. And it came to me laughing its head off, and it was on fire. And suddenly I was getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and I started to see my skin glow. I had to slap myself so many times across the face to bring myself out of the actual experience, and eventually I did. So when GABA first appeared, many, many years down the track, I thought that's what was coming back. Now, through our life, as we become more aware in certain things, there is a lot of evil on this planet that will try to connect with you to tear you down. It's like you're trying to say, give up smoking. And what happens? Suddenly you're in all these smokers. And before you know it, you'll take one and you'll smoke and you'll start smoking again. And it might take you another 2 years before you decide to try it again. The point is, if you have fear in anything, you have to give it away completely. But with GABA, when I first saw him, I was hesitant. We spoke about many things spiritually. He explained to me who he was, what he was, where he came from, how the Yowies became what they became originally from what we know as the Neanderthals with alien DNA. Now, when I say alien DNA, I'm not talking about the aliens that actually played with them. I would say these aliens had lots of samples of different DNA from different worlds and from different species. And I think what they were trying to do was create something. And they did. They created, over probably several hundred years, a thing that we refer to as a Yowie or a Bigfoot. Now, a Bigfoot, right, is basically brown and sort of blackish in hair color. A Yowie is lighter brown with a sort of a background in its hair that's a little bit grey. Now, an abominable snowman, which is also basically a Yowie, they're basically a creamy white, not pure white, creamy white. And their hair is naturally much longer because they're in a much colder climate. Now, Garber wanted to learn about humans. He wanted to know more about the human present, but also the human past. So I used to spend many, many, many hours with him over a very long period of time and explain all that to him. And then I would ask questions. Now, I will mention this one. One evening, he came to me and he stood by my bed and he put his hand where he could see my hand and he said, please, he said, Roman, come with me. And it's like I opened my eyes, but it wasn't my physical, it was my spiritual, my spirit. So he helped me come out of the body. And he held onto my hand and we literally we flew through the wall. And as we went through the wall, we entered this massive, well, actually it wasn't a massive cave to begin with. It was a small cave. They would have to bend down to actually go into it. And once they're inside, it's really huge. It has a lot of turns and you know, that type of thing. You've got to turn left and right and left and right. You've got to walk on narrow edges. And once you do that, you come to a room that was massive. And when I walked in, all I could hear was all these conversations in this language that I felt I knew, but I didn't fully understand. And he said to me, the language that you hear is no longer the language of the Yowies. It is the language that's been adapted by a race called the Nicarons. As soon as he said Nicarons, I said, well, I know Nicarons, I'm a Nicaron. And he looked at me and smiled. He said, I did not know that. And I said, who actually taught you this? He says, one that is called Canard. I said, that's my brother. And I said, others? He said, yes, others, many others came here and spent many hours with us, teaching us. But what they also did, they put their hands on behind us, over the top of our head, just above the ears. And he said, what we felt was when they were doing mantras in their own language, we felt as if something was vibrating from their hands into our heads. I said, do you know what it was? He said, they explained it. They explained that they were sending energy, living energy, from their being into the brain of the Yowies. And over a period of time, they just suddenly spoke Sanskrit perfectly. It's like listening to, a CD with a set of headphones and it's telling you a Japanese language. It doesn't take long, by the way. Probably only a few weeks before you start speaking perfect Japanese. So it's a similar thing. So I learned to understand how the Yowies actually lived, what they ate. It was a moss, a very thick moss that grew down there that they harvest. They had lots of streams and water flowing through. They even had small waterfalls. They had a river not a big river, but a river. And they slept in caves within that mountain. They had these little caves everywhere inside, and it was just incredible. They also have the ability to transform, like, say, a pathway that would appear to be a dead end, a solid wall. So it would prevent anyone with curiosity, like a human, in actually finding their place. They had that ability, which was really interesting. Yeah, so basically that's what we spoke about. We also talked a lot about humanity's past, and Garber really wanted to know about the violence from the species human. So I explained very deeply all about human history and how they had so many wars, how bloody those wars were, the amount of people that perished under very violent situations. And he was just sitting there shaking his head, and he was crying because they have a very strong feeling of heart. They always have. Maybe the aliens gave them that. I don't know. But they do have that. And they really feel the pain of someone suffering. That's why they protect their own so closely. And they would give up their own life to save another, no matter who they are. Like, in their own species, that is. Yeah, so basically that's what eventuated. And we became the best of friends.
Yeah, wow. And that was over, so how many years did you know him before he?
I knew Garber for 27 years, maybe 26, 27. Yeah. And we communicate. He actually spoke through me to meditation groups, channeling. He actually spoke through me. And his voice was so different, mate. His voice was deep, clear, well-spoken, and he spoke in English very, very well. And he spoke through me over a period of about 28 months, something like that, not quite 3 years, and quite a few different groups. And the groups were just amazed when he was talking to them. And a lot of the times I was standing on the left-hand side, still attached to my body, and I listened to everything that was being said. Just like Nardishwa used to do the same thing, which he was an Indian chief from the Cherokees. Yeah. And I did that for about 12 years. I channeled him, and I also channeled him doing consultations over that period of time a lot.
Really? You did one-on-one consultations with people where you would channel him?
Yes.
Wow.
Absolutely. And I got to admit that he used to appear with his full headset on in my body. And people used to look up, and it literally either amazed them or really kept them quiet because they knew they were sitting in front or on the side of an actual Indian that lived, like, say, 500 years ago.
Wow.
And he was 96. Either 96 or 98 when he passed over. I think it was 98 when he passed over. They were a very wise Indian.
Wow.
Yeah. And by the way, Roman, right? Roman was his son back then. And he actually lost him at the age of 18 in battle. He was shot. He lost him, and it was very saddened his heart.
Wow. So it's been a while since you've seen a Yowie? When's the last time you saw one?
It has been a while, mate. It's probably been about, say, what is it? I came back in 2012. About 2016, Garber basically disappeared. He did say to me that he would be going on a very long journey. And I believe he went in a Charon ship, and he's gone to different worlds, especially Uplata, where Cadiz is, because he was fascinated by their culture. So I think the Nakarons actually came in a ship and actually picked him up, and probably took maybe 4 or 5 of his kind, the elders, and did the same thing.
How old do you reckon he is?
Garba would probably be, if I remember correctly, he was 100 and something years old, about 140 something. I'm not sure exactly. So now he would probably be about 160 something, probably about 169 or something. And they do live a very long time, by the way. And what their food is, as I said to you, it's an actual thick moss. But when you pick it up and put in your mouth, it's so easy to chew, and it tastes delicious. Like it actually tastes like vegetables. It's apparently very high in all the nutrition that they actually needed. And food was not a priority of their evolution or their species. They ate it simply because they had to. Yeah. And their water, mate, was so pure to drink. Yeah, I mean, really pure to drink.
Yeah, wow. And it was, I mean, it must be the only uh, species on this earth that like evolved from something physical that then kind of evolved into the category of being an elemental.
In a sense, yes. So they basically went from Neanderthal with a mixture of particular DNA from another alien species that wasn't from this world, through those aliens who were genetic engineers, and they became what they are. And they became much better to what they were because they were simply a Neanderthal evolving. So they picked those Neanderthals to actually create a species, just like the Chinese, where and particular aliens shaped more like Cadiz race. They literally played with the chimps, the gorillas, the baboons, all those species to create the Asian race. And that's why the Asian races look so different. But they also look alien. But they are changing because they have now entered into, how would you say, a negative state of evolution through wars and also through conditioning, but also in what they eat. Go back several thousand years and the Asians were all vegetarian. Today, probably 70% of them are actually carnivores, maybe a bit more. So that plays a very big part in stepping up in evolution or stepping down in evolution.
And with these, the Yowie that had been changed from the Neanderthal, can you explain like the aliens that I think you said get away from that continuing to happen? Like you said that they kind of avoided them.
Oh, no, what actually happened? No. See, these aliens that came here to do that, they weren't aggressive and they weren't into holding on to what they created. They were doing it because they could. And they were putting out new species. But they were trying to put out species that weren't violent. So they picked certain species. And the funny thing is, the Neanderthals that they actually chose were all vegetarian. So they did that for a reason. And those aliens that did the genetic engineering on the Neanderthals, they were also vegetarian in their entire society, back in their own dimension. So they were looking to create balanced, more feeling type beings. And out of that, they created the Yowies. And the Yowies, and when I say the Yowies, I'm not just talking about Garber's species. I'm also talking about the Bigfoot and also the Abominable Snowman. All that. They all came from that. But they just went in different directions.
And they did it with the purpose of just, advancing them on this planet. That was it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep, they never took any back with them anywhere. No, no. They left them and they just let them go. Once they decided to finish doing it, they could see, and I'm sure they communicate. Of course, they wouldn't want to be around them too much, the Yowies, because they would feel intimidated. They would feel a little strange. It'd be like anything. You'd want to get away from it. But the aliens just let them go and they left the planet. They've never been back since. So they allowed that to be. I mean, maybe they might come back one day. You never know. But when the Nakarons discovered them, they were very intrigued, just like they were intrigued with the Doricans. Very much so.
Wait, yeah. When? How many years ago did the Nakarons discover the Yowie?
How many? Oh, no, geez, I have to go very into that one, mate.
Well, I mean, not specifically, but was it before 928,000 years ago?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, yes, yes, yes. They've been evolving now for a very, very long time. As I said, they are a very peaceful race and they don't go out and cause harm to anything. They've never even killed a human being or a
Really?
human animal.
Yeah, never in
Yeah.
their existence.
No,
Wow,
no.
wow.
They've rewarded them, and threatened them, but they're not into killing. And what's really more interesting is if you take most vegetarians, they're not into going out to be deceitful or to be a narcissist or to be a psychopath killer or sex rapist or anything like that. They're not into that. And most vegetarians are not like that. You'll get some vegetarians where they will stand up and fight for their rights, but they won't go out and harm other ones with cruelty and that type of thing. Carnivores, on the other hand, in the animal flesh, that's where the issue is. And they've proven that so strongly in America, where they have a prison that suddenly everyone was just fighting and causing mayhem, battles. They're having outbursts, all that type of stuff. And one of the psychologists said, look, can we try something? And they asked him what? The warden said what? He said, I want to put every single one of them on a vegetarian diet, a lot of fruit. And they said, what for? And he said, I've got a theory. He said, what is it? He said, I can't say at this time, but I got a theory and I believe 89, maybe 95% it'll work. So the warden gave him permission. So every piece of flesh was removed from the actual prison. And the chefs had to cook all vegetarian meals and fruit, which they did. No fish, no prawns, no oysters, all that was gone. Everything, all meat. It wasn't even, I think, a month, 4 or 5 weeks. And suddenly there was less and less and less violence. And it got to a point where there was no violence. No one even swore. Before that, everything was swearing all the time. Really foul language. And suddenly, there was nothing. And every one of those prisoners was humble and started to feel with their heart. And they started to say sorry for what I did to you, or sorry about this, or sorry about that. Now, I have no idea because nothing's been said recently. This happened only a few years ago. And nothing's been said since. So I don't know what they've done in changes or what. But apparently, it's 100% true. You go into a vegetarian diet, and you're a violent person before that, and you take away all animal foods, you will, in time, change and become peaceful and calm because you don't have the fear and the anger within the animal flesh inside of you any longer. It's dissipating slowly but surely. And that's a known fact, proven.
Yeah, wow. And how tall is Gabba?
He's just over 7 feet.
Wow. And I've one of my fond memories that you mentioned is that he was just so wonderful to hug.
Yes, yes, yes. He bends down, like he bends his legs. He doesn't bend his back a lot. He'll bend down and he'll put his arms around you, which are huge, and he'll just pick you straight up. You're like a floating doll. You know? He can even pick you up with one hand as easy as pie, mate, because they're so strong. They can swing through trees. They can hang off a branch for hours and hours and hours and not an issue.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah, wow.
They're always climbing, by the way. It's part of their training. So their legs are always powerful and their arms are always powerful. So it's quite interesting, really.
Gosh.
Very interesting.
You've been like, Canard taught you? He's my brother.
Yes, yes. Yeah, it was very interesting, actually. It's amazing the things you find out, you know, like it really, how would you say, not amazed me, it made me say, oh, wow, really? Because, you know, I didn't even know. And the problem is when you're on a planet that has not much communication going outside of its vibration, it makes it very difficult. Where you've got a planet like the Caris or Doricans or the Ilias or anyone, even Cadiz race, they're communicating with all these different alien planets around all these different universes. So it makes it a lot more simple.
Mm, mm, yeah. So a lot of advanced civilizations just never even ate um, meat at all, did they?
No. A lot of it didn't. No. That's why they're very loving as a being, and they don't have any hatred inside them because they haven't got the fear that comes out of the animal when you kill it. I mean, God Almighty, these poor animals are reincarnating all the time and being slaughtered. Even at 4 months old, 5 months old, they take away the like the little calves from the mothers, and the mothers they just mourn for them. You know, they make these sounds and they cry and everything. I mean, these animals have feelings, not emotion. It's feelings, and that's interesting. You know, we as humans, we can become nice or we can try to feel, but because we've been so highly conditioned through fear and all our life's experiences, we're really hard-nosed. You know, there's so many narcissists, so many psychopaths on this planet. It is just incredible. It's very hard these days, Michael, to find a person who has a true heart. Do you know that? And I'm one of the most luckiest. I can tell you that now. I know that for a fact with Michelle, because she has a really honest heart, and that's worth hundreds of billions of dollars to me.
Yeah, for sure. So these Yowie, are they in communication with each other even over the span of the entire planet, like maybe telepathically?
Oh, they can be, yes. They have telepathic abilities, by the way, yes, they do. Do you know, if I sat you in front of me on a chair, because you're so bloody tall, if I sat you down and I put my hands on the side of your head just above your ears and I projected living energy into you and then put the thought of you achieving something, and I did that, say for 2 weeks, every day for 2 weeks, I guarantee without even saying to you what I was doing, after that 2 weeks or even 3 weeks, give it take, you would do it. You know that? You would know what I was doing. You may not know exactly what I was doing, but if I said to you, okay, Michael, I want you to go out and walk every single day for 5Ks, suddenly out of nowhere, you would start to do it. That's why it was so easy for the Nicarons to put their hands on the side of on the Yowie's head and project living energy in a thought form of Sanskrit. And it literally embedded itself into the brain cells of the Yowies, and they end up speaking, and they end up understanding the language in such a very short time. That's how powerful thought projection is through living energy.
Wow, wow. And how many, like in a family group, how many children would one family have?
Normally one or two. Normally one or two, yes. And also when a male and a female take notice of each other and there's a liking, it's normally instant love for life. They never have a breakup. They, as what I remember, they never also have arguments. There's no disarray. It's just a very peaceful thing. Sometimes, you know, the Yowie might turn and say, but I think we should do it this way. And then the female would say, well, I'll consider it, but I also think we should do it my way too. And then there's agreement. They have a tendency to agree, and they'll let it try one way, and then they'll also do it the other way. So there's a balance between yin and yang, not always the male way.
Mm-hmm. And they don't keep records. They don't write anything down.
No, nothing. Everything's in their heads. When they pass over, they are like us. They come out of their bodies and they go into their own spirit vibration, and they can be reborn again because they are thinking, conscious beings like humanity, but they are more highly evolved when it comes to the spirit essence or the knowledge of that knowing.
Yeah. And what about other people apart from yourself? Have they presented themselves, and for what reason?
It's very few, by the way,
Mm.
very, very few. And a lot of the times it's always females that they present themselves to, whether it's a male Yowie or a female Yowie. When they present themselves, they normally do it to a person that believes in the element kingdom, especially with women. Men seem to have more deeply ingrained negativity. I think that's got a lot to do with they've been a male more than ever, and they've also been involved in, countless number of wars and violence and all that type of stuff. Where women, they have a tendency also just to sort of stay into that women energy, and they don't become a man as much. And a man doesn't become a woman as much either.
Really? Mm.
Yeah, it just seems to be something that humanity seems to experience. Where in the Yowie world, you might be a male one time, and the next time you'll come in as a female, because they believe in the balance. We as a society don't seem to understand that form of balance, and that's why we are so ingrained with negativity.
And what positive effects are the Yowies having on this planet and maybe even humanity?
They actually do what they call, well, I call them mantras, all over the entire planet. They have an ability to vibrate their entire being, and when they vibrate, it's like an energy being dispersed. And these beings live all over the planet. And what they do is they send it to Mother Earth for balance, and they also send it out when there's a war or anything like that to try and bring the war down. They don't judge it. That's why they don't get into the vibration of humanity, because they know how violent we are as a species. They are trying to help balance us. in their own understanding. They have a very unique balance. They're very much like the Nicarons. The only difference is the Nicarons are into technology, but they have created technology right from the beginning out of living energy. We don't. We do it for greed. We create something, invent something, and we sell it to the mass market to make money. The Carons don't. Ilias don't. Cadiz race doesn't. Forgive me for not saying Cadiz, the name of their race, because I'm always forgetting it. Yeah, I say they're planet Uplata. It's easy to say, yeah, Uplata. But their actual name of their beings is a bit difficult. So it's up to every species to grow, and if humanity stays in its bizarreness of negativity, well, then there's no evolution. Yeah, you might have new technology, but there's no evolution consciously, and that's a big thing. You could end up like the reptilians, mate. They don't have how would you say? They don't have a consciousness when it comes to heart, when it comes to ethics, when it comes to empathy. They don't have that ability. And the way we're going, we're having less and less empathy for others. Even in families, we don't have the empathy and the feelings that we used to as a family, because we're being torn apart because of our old conditioning through our emotion. That's the issue.
So the Yowie, they sound, so great and so conscious. What is their what is their future, and what are they kind of striving towards, considering, they're doing so well, they are so balanced?
They don't look into the future. It's nothing that they believe in or even want to know about, because they see what humans are like, how, they talk about what's your goals in life and, what are you going to do in 15 years' time or 5 years' time. That's a really big mistake in one way, because what you're trying to do is create the future so far into the future when you're not even balanced at this stage in your life. You've got to create the future from the moment. And when we learn to understand that self-awareness, that's when we really grow, and that's when our future can improve.
Yeah, so you don't see the Yowies being interested in taking on technology because they just have no need, no interest.
Not at all. No, not
Mm,
at all. Not at all.
mm.
No, not at all. When the Yowies had thought consciousness and they could think, they didn't want to hang around these aliens because they felt negative towards them. It was like there was something, a hidden agenda, but they didn't know what it was. They could feel something. And they were very much into then, say, feeling about energy, how something felt, because their thought consciousness was developing quite rapidly, because they put a Neanderthal with their type of DNA or another species type of DNA that probably had the ability that those aliens weren't aware of, that brought that thought consciousness forward so rapidly. And it did.
Wow. And they're the fact that they were building them in the sense that they were, they're like, say, 5 times stronger than humans and much larger.
Yes, yes.
They just that was a part of their interest to do that. Not necessarily that they would use them as war machines necessarily, but
No, no. I wouldn't even know what the purpose was, because it would be very hard to define. But there would have been something there. Maybe they had an agreement with another aggressive alien race to maybe supply some sort of war machines for them and train them and use them. It could have been, because there were so many battles going on between different races, and they were all fighting for a purpose. So that could have been part of it. It's like the armor gods bringing the dragons onto Earth to work for Nasataya. It was the same principle. And eventually, he became threatened, so he decided that the only way to break that fear is to destroy all the dragons. And that's what he did. He invited all the dragons, but only a percentage, probably about over 100 came, and he poisoned the whole lot. And then he went out still and got his warriors, his soldiers, to, behead the dragons, get rid of them. And he would pay a certain amount of money to have them killed. And the only one that survived, just barely, was naturally Tang Yung.
Wow. How many more were there that weren't with the 100 that were at the celebration?
I think find just under 300 in total.
Yeah, okay, wow.
Yeah. And it could have been like 100, it could have been 130, 150, for all I know. The exact figure would be very hard to define, but I know it was over 100. And they poisoned the lot through this massive amounts of food and liquids and all that type of stuff. So, and they acted so honorably, because they wouldn't eat the same food as the dragon, so they ate different food. So it was easy for them to poison the food. And because they were so friendly and, acted so nicely towards the dragons never became suspicious. But Tang Yung warned them, don't go and get too close to them, because he felt there was something wrong, but they wouldn't listen to Tang Yung. So that's what happened. I mean, don't get me wrong, a lot of Nasataya soldiers died, mate. They were ripped apart like newspaper so easily, because the dragons were very strong. But unfortunately, there was more of the warriors, and they were shooting massive fireballs into the sky, and they were hitting dragons because the dragons are always flying close together. So, that was just one of those things. That's how it all ended. And it's the same with the Yowies. Eventually, when they went underground, there was a connection with the Nicarons. And the Nicarons helped them. And they taught them how to go between vibrations, just like they taught the Doricans how to transform through transcendental meditation and bring their consciousness to a point where they could understand the difference between the physical essence of flesh and blood or the spiritual essence of energy. And when you start understanding the real essence of energy, you start to realize that energy is everything and everything is energy. If you can visualize it through your imagination and create a universe, Michael, and this is very powerful because I know this to be true, but if you can do this, then that universe is manifested. For how long, I don't know. It depends on how strong you are. Our mind, with our imagination, through our thought consciousness, is creating all the time. We've actually created all the multidimensional world, but I don't know if it was the Earth that did it or one of the other 17 planets that did it. But all those multidimensional worlds come from one dimension originally.
Wow, it's fair to say that Yakis has worked on creating a universe before.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. He's created, look, I honestly don't know the exact number, and I'd be foolish to actually say, but I believe it's quite a lot of universes. I do.
Wow.
Because he has, honestly, mate, one of the most, he's the one that I know the most from that perspective, but he has one of the most powerful thought projections that I've ever come across. I saw him create that pyramid, a transparent pyramid that had lounge chairs that were transparent. It was so comfortable, by the way. And it traveled at the speed of light. And it was a huge thing. It could have been at least 60 foot tall. It could have been 50 foot wide and 50 foot wide the other way. And it had no instruments in it whatsoever. He drove that with his own consciousness. And that's how powerful we are and can eventually become. If we learn to understand the difference between the flesh brain, the mind, the thought consciousness, the heart connected to the soul. If we can learn to understand that energy, we can learn to fully manifest through our imagination. And that's why I've always stated the greatest gift we have is imagination. That's where it all begins.
Wow. With when they met the Yowies, the Nicarans discovered them, and how did they communicate to start off with?
There was actually no real communication to begin with. What the Nicarans did, this was a fluke, by the way. It was a fluke in discovering them because they were taking transparent pictures around the earth, and they could go deep within the earth itself. And they just happened to come across one of the civilizations that had GABA in it. And they looked and they were puzzled by these tall beings, the same size as the Nicaron, but hairy and had red eyes. And they were intrigued. So what they did, they came to Earth in a different vibration that humanity could not see them in. Between the third and the fourth, they had that ability. And they waited. And when they saw these beings actually transpire into the physical world, that's where they made the connection. And when they first did it, the Yowies ran, took off, and disappeared again. And eventually, they transformed themselves inside one of their actual massive caves. And they just stood there in the corner watching. And when they were recognized, it scared the Yowies, mate, because these beings were the same size as them, massively huge, even in muscle structure, with a weapon on their back, a big sword. And it was Kanag that said, "We are here in peace." And what he did, he projected his vocals that matched their understanding. It's like saying, "We are friends. We are not here to hurt you. We only want to communicate. Please, can we communicate?" And he learnt by hearing their language and created that language verbally and expressed it in energy form so they understood. And it was GABA that came forward and he put his two arms out as if to say, "I'm here." And when Kanag came forward, they both clenched their fists together with each other's hands. And he said, "You are my brother." That's what Kanag said. And GABA said, "Then you are my brother. So we are at peace." And that's when it all started. And he took GABA and I think several other ones onto the ship to show them. So it was very interesting, and that's where it all began.
Wow. And then you said there's so many directions I can go with questions and ideas. Like you said that Kanag didn't realize for thousands of years later that the Nicarans had actually continued to help them, and they had learned how to shift to the fourth dimension and had become basically elementals.
Yeah, because Kanag was out fighting battles. He was called away because he's a commander, like an admiral commander, and he was called away because there was a really, really dangerous situation. He was gone probably 15, 20, 30 years. And in that time, they were being taught by the Nicarans.
And in the end, they had, these Yowies kind of had a skill probably stronger than the Nicarans when it came to shifting between third and fourth, and that's why he came back.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Um, uh, oh, so many. What was my other? I had another question. I had to go on different tangents, so I was so excited. I know why the Nicarons were here scanning the Earth. Wasn't that because there weren't any humans yet? Because there weren't any Nicarons that they placed here. Is that why they were here scanning, just to check it out?
That's right. That's right.
Wow.
They wanted to find out what Earth was about. They wanted to know more about the Earth. And what they discovered was that the Earth was one of the richest resources in so many different universes. And that's why all the wars were going on
I see.
all the time. They never interfered, by the way, the Nicarons, with any of the wars. They kept away. They kept within a dimension that they could not be seen. Just like their massive starship, it could not be seen ever. And there were sometimes when they came within the Earth's vibration, you still wouldn't see it.
Hmm.
And like planes and whatever went through it. And it was just because it was in a different dimension.
And when you say dimension, was that was held by their technology, right? Instead of, say, like with the Yowies, which would literally learn how to do it completely without technology, to just phase between the third and fourth.
That's right.
Wow.
They were taught. They were taught.
So, like, here's a more down to earth question. There must be, what do you think? There must be many wild creatures, not all of them, but many that have actually witnessed these Yowies.
You mean like Earth creatures?
Yeah, like deer and whatever else, birds.
Absolutely. They would have run for their life, mate.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course they would have. Yeah, but then again, it's hard to say because I'd have to go back and check the past, because maybe the deers became friendly with them. Maybe the elephants become friendly with them. Maybe, whatever other creatures. It's hard to say because they had such a loving nature. And that's the difference. They were a really balanced being. I shouldn't even call them a creature, because to me they're just another being.
Hmm.
Because they're highly evolved spiritually, not technology-wise, right? And to my knowledge, the only one that was actually intrigued with all the technology was actually Kanag. Not Kanag, Gaba. So yeah.
It is quite beautiful to me to comprehend the idea that there could be a species that evolved, and yes, they did have some alien intervention, but could evolve so far that they could even evolve beyond incarnating anymore without ever diving into technology. I mean, that's amazing.
Yep, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. I mean, if you look at it, look how long it takes. Look how long it takes to do research about the past. Like wherever the past is or whatever the past is, it takes a long, long time. And yet, here they are. And here we are. And yet we talk about the past. We gather information. We pass the information on. Whether somebody believes it or not is something totally up to them. That's why it doesn't affect me. Excuse me. It doesn't affect me if somebody says, I don't believe you. I said, that's fine. I said, there'll come a time when you probably will. But your belief systems do hold you back from growing beyond. In other words, making changes in your existence. It's your fear. A lot of people say, oh, yeah, that's probably true too. Yeah, I do. I hold on to my fear. I'm like my dad. I've had so many people, Michael, say that to me. I'm like my dad, or I'm like my mum. And what they don't realize is they're actually admitting to themselves that they're a clone of their parents. If you look at it honestly. And we are. I can say 100% beyond all doubt, what stops us from growing is our past on this planet. It's what we've created, each of us. What we've created is created out of violence, and it's become our fear. And that's why we have so many ugly, evil people on this planet. And do you know what I now call the elite criminals?
What's that?
This is interesting. I call them CPC. And CPC stands for cannibalistic pedophile criminals. That's what they are. Cannibalistic? Absolutely. Pedophiles? Absolutely. Criminals? Absolutely. And that's what I now refer them to. Cannibalistic, pedophiles, criminals. Because that's what they are.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, yeah. I was trying to make a joke in my head about, how people, catch an STD. It's like this Earth is caught a CPC.
Yeah, I like that. Yep.
Is there anything else that you wanted to maybe express today that you might be able to get out in the next, say, 10 or so minutes?
Probably not really. I will see. No, mate. No. What I want to talk about, probably not add this in at this time. I'd like to talk about it in a lot of depth. A guy by the name of Burt Goldman. Do you know who Burt Goldman is?
Oh, that's a really familiar name. Was he the time travel one? I mean, the alternate realities one? I mean,
Jumping.
I mean, time travel and alternate realities are really related, aren't they?
Yes. Well, he is actually a monk. He's a monk in America, and he's probably now in his either late 80s or he's into his early 90s, or he may even be passed over. I'm not sure. But when I listened to his CDs many years ago, he was either 78 or 82. I'm not sure. And he's had the most interesting life. And what I want to do is talk about his reality in his life so people can understand how this person had no awareness whatsoever. He was a young sergeant in the army during the Second World War. And from what he experienced in Korea and Hawaii and America and all the seminars he ran and all the different things that he did, like working with energy, working as a hypnosis, learning self-hypnosis, so many different types of healing, helping people to heal themselves. That's why he had a dream experience about quantum jumping. And he said he met a man in spirit world that said this to him, something like this. He said, whatever your imagination can see, you have the power within you to manifest. If you see a world or a dimension and you think about it and you say, I want to manifest that now, it can become a reality. But only you might see it because you're the one that created it. And that held so much fascination to Burt. And years later, he came up with quantum jumping. And he created it, and it was Mind Valley that actually put it all together, his material, made him the main speaker, and they were making a lot of money from him, because that's what they do. Because I think that guy from Mind Valley is no longer doing what he's doing, I believe, because I haven't heard of him for a long time. He was trying to be a big guru. And people were getting pretty fed up with a lot of the things that he was saying because he was taking that from Deepak Chopra and a lot of other people. So I don't think he's doing what he's doing anymore. I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
So, I mean...
So I want... Yeah, go on, sorry.
I mean, this is a wonderful question for me to somehow unravel that I don't know what I'm going to say, but I know you're going to affirm this. Like, you do believe that, like anything, because of your believing, anything that you can imagine, regardless of how big or crazy or whatever, given the space and time, whatever's necessary can come about, including jumping, through time or this or that or whatever. Really, anything you can imagine and really believe and resonate with is possible.
Absolutely. I'll tell you the reason why. We have roughly 17 multi-dimensional worlds, I believe. It could be a few more now. I haven't looked into it lately. Okay. Those worlds, I've actually jumped onto them and I've visited them, and I've also gone into the body of myself on that multi-dimensional world, a planet. And I've even, one of them was a snake, a massive, massive snake that was killing off all the villagers. Well, I end up killing it. Now, I was brought there for a reason, because of my skills with swords. Because I'm the type of person that would never give in. I would fight to my last breath. Even if the breath was leaving my body, I would still try to fight. Because I believe you never, ever, ever give up.
So, and most of those alternate realities that you landed in, it was mostly unintentional. Is that correct?
Unintentional. That's correct.
And when you say, I think you've told me that when you say that you've seen your body and you've even been in your body in another one of these realities, for most people it's the same. Like if you saw me in one of those other realities, it would be me and my similar body with my same spirit. But for you, is it true that every other alternate reality has if it still does, it has the Roman body that you came into around the age of 18, whereas you, in this particular Earth's reality, this is the only one that has you, Kuntarkis, as the walk-in spirit?
Absolutely.
Lucky us, lucky us.
Yeah, well, lucky me, yeah. Yeah.
Most of is Roman dead in most of the other alternate realities?
No.
No, he's not.
No, he's not. He's still alive in some. He has died in some. The one with the snake, he died the night before. He was eaten by the snake. He went out because he was angry. His wife and one of his children were taken by the snake. And he just lost it. And he decided to go out that night with his double swords. He was a double sword person. And even though he fought the snake won. It killed him. And it ate him. And that's why I think I was led into that direction, whatever the case may be. But do you know the reason why I could do it, Michael, into multidimensional worlds? You want to know the real reason?
Yeah.
It's not because I tried to put myself there with my own abilities. It was because of Burt Goldman.
Really?
I did the practicing for over 3.5 years, solid. And it literally helped me so much in jumping out of my body, jumping back in, and being self-aware, but also to actually come on to multidimensional worlds and be self-aware, because I was self-aware.
Wow.
And I knew whatever I did and I came back, I remembered, and that was the difference.
Wow.
Everything in life, Michael, has a purpose. The purpose can only be developed if one's thinking is allowed to change. When you change your thinking from what you are in this present moment, you begin to see another form of reality. And it can help you grow consciously, physically, and even financially. It's up to you what you do with it, how you learn. But you've got to put the energy into it. Because if you allow your energies to become stale, then you'll be stale. But if you allow your energies to have thought consciousness on a regular basis, it means you are evolving. But if you stay the same and you never think consciously, only with your logical thinking, with your logical conditioning, That's all you are, nothing more. I listened probably 24 times, maybe 26, the first disc, which explained his life when he was 19, back in 1946. And that was in Korea. And his story is fascinating. He was nothing, just a young upcoming sergeant. And yet he was on a path that was pushing him and directing him into another way of thinking. He has helped thousands of people around the world. I'm talking, it could be tens of thousands. More likely that's what it is, because I have no idea unless I go into it and search. But I would like to make contact with him just to know that maybe he's still physically alive, and just to say to him, Mr. Goldman, you don't know me, but I just want to say thank you. He'll say to me, why? I said, because you inspired me to go into multidimensional worlds. You helped me save probably hundreds of thousands of beings by destroying the evil that exists on those planets. That's what I'd like to say to him.
Wow.
Just to say that, mate. To feel some gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I know for a lot of other people that are reaping the wonderful benefits of Burt Goldman, I think a lot of them, they draw in like the skills that they can imagine or believe, or that exist in these alternate realities that these other selves have. And I think there was one guy on I saw a clip of him, and he was getting older and older, but he just, whatever he put his hand to, any other craft, skill, art, whatever.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as I said to you, I'm now back on it, right? I'm now back on doing quantum jumping. See, sometimes you have to refresh yourself to go forward. So I've got this strong burning desire to actually do it. So I'm doing it. The last 2 nights I've been doing it. I'm going to keep doing it. I'll go right through discs again.
Yeah, good on you.
And just keep doing it, because I believe that everything in life has changed. And I believe now it's time for me also to change. So by doing this, it's going to enhance my own abilities, where I'll be able to jump into any vibration that I choose. Physically.
Wow.
I'm talking physically, Michael.
Wow.
It's actually cleaning my body right down to a point where I no longer have the same form of atoms that I've had most of my life. I'm transforming my atoms into something more of an energy field, where I can create by letting go of my old body form and take on a new body form that is physical, but also can become silhouette at the same time. There are masters from the past that believe that. I'll have to go in a moment, mate. I'm sorry.
Just before you go, I'll say one little story you told me ages ago, and I think I was one of the only people you really told. You found yourself in, it might have been Japan or somewhere, and you're having a coffee with a couple of people that you actually knew from Australia, and it was so amazing, and they were so amazed by it. And then someone else saw you from across the road, and as soon as you two locked eyes, it's like a car passed, and they looked again, and you completely vanished.
That's right. Yep, I know. And there are people, Michael, that are doing that today. There are other people doing that, Michael. There is so much more to existence. I won't say to life, I'll say existence, than most of us could ever comprehend. And the only way to do that is to change our thought consciousness and be willing to grow beyond. And if we grow beyond, that's where we see change. Good change, positive change. And on that note, my friend, I have to go.
This concludes another episode of Kuntarkis on understanding the light. Thank you so much, Kuntarkis, for all that you shared. If you'd like to know more about Kuntarkis, he has a website, etcconsciousness.com, where there's plenty about him, including his several books. And also, if you'd like to contact us to ask a question, make a request maybe, and such, then email kuntarkis@gmail.com. That's it for now. Thanks so much for listening. My name is Michael Yon, and stay tuned for more.